Here.
Mr. Pell?
Here.
Mr. Brumleve?
Here.
All right. Well, again, good evening. Welcome, everyone. And for those of you that may be watching from home, we welcome you also. We have several items on our agenda this evening. Just a quick order of business. Item number 5, the Mid-America Auto Group expansion conditional use request has been withdrawn. So we'll be not be considering that this evening. So for the 2 cases that we have on the agenda, I'd like to just go through briefly the process we'll have. Initially, we will hear from staff. They'll present the request and any recommendations on behalf of the city and city staff. We'll then hear from the applicant explaining what their request. The Planning Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff or the applicant as they conclude their presentation. We'll then open up the floor to those of you who are in the room who would like to ask questions or make comments regarding the request. We ask that you come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, ask your questions, make your comments to Planning Commission. If there's any feedback you're seeking as a result of your testimony, the applicant or city staff will address those once we've heard from everyone. So we'll be making a list of those questions that need addressed. Once we've heard from everyone who's in this room, we will open up the question and comment period to those that may be watching on Zoom. Pam Holbrook will be monitoring our Zoom feed, making sure that we're catching anyone who raises their hand and wishes to participate. City staff will we have ICRC here this evening to assist in our endeavor. Thank you very much. So we'll manage this meeting as best as possible, giving everyone an opportunity to participate. We are so grateful that you're here and those online as well. So did we talk about those minutes? We didn't, did we?
We were going to continue.
Yeah, we had minutes on the agenda. They'll be continued to the next meeting, the minutes from the May meeting. So our first request this evening is the Little Miami Brewing Company Event Center at 310 Mill Street. Pam, would you present the case, please?
Thank you. Hank Rowe, the applicant, is proposing to construct a 9,936 square foot building with an approximately 3,000 square foot patio in the rear. The building will be used as an event center to accommodate weddings, corporate events, and special gatherings. The case number is site 2005, project Little Miami Event Center. The location would be a new address, 310 Mill Street. Tax parcel 210708117P. The acreage is 2.9161 acres. The zoning is Milford River District. The existing use is vacant. The proposed use is an event center or a rental hall. The property owner is Terra Firma Development and the applicant is Hank Rowe. To the north, the zoning is Milford River District. It's the downtown Milford. To the south is the Little Miami River. To the east is R3 single family residential. And to the west is Milford River District, the Little Miami Brewery. The applicant intends to use the building as an event center that will be available for rent to wedding parties, meetings, and corporate gatherings. The Milford zoning ordinance does not explicitly define event center. However, the most closely matched use is rental hall and described as a building that is leased to groups for parties, meetings, and other functions. A rental hall is a permitted use in the Milford River District. It appears the applicant's proposed use of an event center is a permitted use in this zoning district. The Milford River District specifies the following dimensional standards: maximum height 45 feet, and the applicant's building is 25 feet to the center ridge. Minimum lot area, there is none. The provided is 2.92 acres. Minimum lot width is just the average lot width. The applicant has a 60-foot at the right-of-way and 230 plus feet at the building line. Minimum front yard setback is required as average front setback. This is a panhandle lot, and the front setback is 190 feet. The minimum rear yard setback is required average setback, and this provided is 70 plus feet. Minimum side yard is, there is none, and there is a 30-foot side yard setback provided. The applicant appears to meet all dimension requirements as required by the zoning ordinance. Site development generally complies with the standards outlined in section 1167.11. The applicant has created a pedestrian connection by installing a 5-foot sidewalk from Main Street, which leads to the parking lot. Staff recommends that marked crosswalks be added in the parking lot to help direct the pedestrian towards the event center. Also, staff recommends that bicycle racks be included. The steel frame building will be clad in a brick veneer. A portico provides a focal point to the front main entrance, roll-up doors in the rear leading out to a patio. The initial design included brick infill windows, but Mr. Rowe revised plans to comply with the zoning ordinance, which requires that the ground floor front facade be at least 50% transparent. The building design color and scale closely match the brewery building and blends nicely with the adjacent mill building. I did put a revised elevation there for you to see. He's added a row of windows on the front facade there. A 30-foot vegetated buffer is required along the east side property perimeter due to the proximity between commercial and residential use. Much of the existing vegetation would remain, but would be supplemented with arborvitae and pine trees in the buffer area. And that is one thing in looking at the aerial a little closer. There's a border, there appears to be a little bit of clearing that was really close to one section of the property that's adjacent to Pat Chandler. And I would recommend that some additional trees be added along that particular border area. In the parking, the lot is accessed by a shared driveway. The parking lot will accommodate 74 parking spaces and is adjacent to the existing 55-space brewery parking lot. Staff believes the applicant has provided sufficient parking for the use as an event center. Although the ordinance provides an exemption from the requirements of Chapter 1187 off-street parking, the applicant is providing an extensive landscaping plan that includes 65 trees and 62 shrubs. The applicant has not included a lighting plan. Exterior lights should be full cutoff and shielded in accordance with the Milford ordinance to mitigate light spilling onto neighboring properties. The city engineer will be reviewing all stormwater and floodplain plans. He notes any project in a floodway must be reviewed to determine if the project will increase flood heights. An engineering analysis must be conducted before a permit can be issued. The community's permit file must have a record of the results of this analysis, which can be in the form of a no-rise certification. This no-rise certification must be supported by technical data and signed by a registered professional engineer. The supporting technical data should be based on the standard step backwater computer model used to develop the 100-year floodway shown on the flood insurance rate map or flood boundary and floodway map. And Tim Castro, the city engineer, is here tonight, and we'll let him speak to any questions or any additional comments that he may have regarding that. The applicant appears to meet the technical requirements of the ordinance. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. City approval contingent on review and approval by city engineer and any other local, state, and federal agencies. Provide crosswalks through the parking lot from sidewalk connection to the event center. Add bicycle parking. Submit a lighting plan, exterior lights to be full cutoff and shielded in accordance with Milford ordinance to mitigate light spilling onto neighboring properties. Mark the residential property boundaries. Applicant to coordinate with Duke for any utility crossings. Applicant to prepare no-rise certificate along with supporting calculations. And just to add that Mr. Rowe did provide us with additional detail earlier, was that yesterday? Yes, yesterday regarding the floodplain information, and Tim can speak to that. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at that yet. Okay. A minimum of 14 feet through clearance required under the canopy. They're actually providing 16, but just that is a fire department comment. Fire alarm and sprinkler system required. Fire hydrant to be located within 75 feet of FDC. Knox box required. Automated gate to have a Knox key override switch. Driveway in front of building and under the canopy to be marked no parking fire lane. Address number to be displayed on building per code requirements. And I'd be happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
Any questions for Pam from Planning Commission at this time? Do we want to hear from Tim now or wait for clarification?
Tim, do you have anything you'd like to say right now or?
Yeah, it's, I was out earlier today meeting with Pat Chandler on his property, and I know that he had produced some past documents, and this is back in the Bud days, in regards to a tributary area on his property that appears to me there's some grading encroachment into that. And I think at the time there was a condition for a previous developed scheme on the property that tributary would be reopened back up. So I wasn't sure if that was going to be included as a part of a condition, because when we're looking at the changing in grades there, specifically the applicant is they're putting 48 cubic yards of fill within the floodway, and they're also removing kind of doing some other excavations to compensate for the filling in one area and excavation in another. But that area is close by where that tributary is. So there may be, I have questions on if that is changed. What would that change be, and how does that impact the flood study and elevations that they have included in that?
Okay, and then Hank can address that when he comes up.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Castro. At this time, then, we will hear from the applicant.
Hank Rowe, 750 US 50, DER development. Really, Pam covered all the technical data fairly well. This is a permitted use, rental halls, AKA event center. They're synonymous in my mind. I think it's a great addition to Old Milford. We had a number of people comment that this is a needed void to be filled down in the historical district. Tim, as far as the tributary from Mr. Chandler, yeah, if we're creating a balance in the floodway, if we can create, the necessary excavation that we need in the floodway, if we can kind of parlay that with the Chandler tributary as he's defining it, then we're open to that. It's a minor amount of excavation, and that can definitely be worked out. We all come together as a team and figure out what needs to be done there. I just want to add that, there's it's called the, what's the study, Pam, that you have as part of the comprehensive plan, Milford comprehensive plan, that the Milford River District zoning ordinance kind of, makes mention of that. I really think this is a great addition to that comprehensive plan. That provides some guidance for expanding and redeveloping the historical downtown area, including adding, daytime and nighttime, activities, which this will be doing. I don't think all of the events down there are going to be in the evening hours. I mean, there will be events in the daytime and the evening both. So I think that is a positive. We're trying to, all come together and proceed in, multiple facets of what Milford's vision is for the future. And that's one of them. Really, I don't have anything to add. I'd like to come back up after some other folks get a chance to voice their opinions or concerns and kind of address them at that time. But are there any questions you all have for me at this point? Tim, did you get a chance to read the content of the technical content of the the floodway permit application, floodplain permit application?
Yeah, and I think we're close. We're going to have some comments with that, but I think we can work through things, and also the grading
Okay.
that with the changes there, and I think actually it may be even more excavation that would be a benefit there.
Okay. All right, Dan.
Mr.
Joe.
Rowe,
Oh, John.
I'm behind the pole here.
Sorry.
There was a neighborhood meeting on May 20th.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure that you're privy to all the discussions there. Were there any things that you tweaked in the plan to try to accommodate concerns that were brought up in that meeting?
The primary concerns were the parking, traffic impacts, and then the lack of transparency in the front elevation. We had a number of old, what looked like faux old window infills with masonry, because the windows weren't really conducive to our layout and use inside the building. But Pam noted that was a, kind of a sticking point with some people that have viewed those elevations, and that it was also, in fact, an ordinance requirement in the code. So we went back and took out those fake window infills and actually inputted, storefront windows to make up for that. So that's the only really, change we have done, material change to the design sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dan, Joe?
Hi, Dan Lynch, 208 Mill Street. So this project is born out of need and demand for events that people have wanted to have at our brewery, which is too small. Parties, celebration of life, retirement, weddings, 2 emails on weddings today. So this is just a natural extension of the desire for the community to be in a brewery setting. They like the feel, the open air, the comfort. They're comfortable there, even with this pandemic. It's been nice to see that people feel comfortable in our brewery. So that's the impetus of this project. We looked at it as a natural extension of our business, and would think that it would be an awesome, and people have said that to us, would be an awesome addition. We intend to comply, be good neighbors, and follow any and all ordinances that have already been passed regarding this issue. And that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
All right, we will open up the floor to anyone else who wishes to provide comments or ask questions regarding the project.
I'm going to hand these out to you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So my name is Kelly Addy. I live at 5880 Park Road. I'm a former assistant prosecuting attorney. I own my own business, and I'm also a realtor. The mayor and city council passed a very broad noise ordinance in January that I've just learned about last week. Even though I was in touch with the city manager and the mayor on several occasions asking about it, and was never told that one was passed in January. During the neighborhood meeting, and I quote, Ms. Holbrook stated that the city received a number of emails from interested neighbors. Noise and traffic congestion was a common concern mentioned by the neighbors. Could you address those concerns? Mr. Brenner stated there would be bans for various events and people on the patio. The garage doors will be open. Mr. Brenner, they will hear music. Mr. Lynch said the ordinance was adopted by the council and we will follow it. You can't have a wedding without a band. Ms. Holbrook stated that potentially there could be a band playing at the brewery and also at the event center at the same time. Mr. Brenner and Mr. Lynch said yes. Mr. Lynch stated this is an entertainment district and a small minority of residents have an issue. Okay, so honestly, this is not an entertainment district. There is no such thing in the code. It is the Milford River District. And under the purpose of the Milford River District, it is to protect the unique small town and historic character of downtown Milford while promoting the growth and development of new commercial and residential uses. It's allowing for encouraging broad mix of uses, and more urban pattern of development while respecting the district's historic context and creating a vibrant, pedestrian-friendly environment. It goes on and it says, assure that new construction, restoration, and expansion projects are compatible with the character of a traditional downtown and enhance the main street character. So next, let's see, we go to permitted uses. And under the permitted uses, this is a rental hall, as we've discussed earlier. The thing about it is the Planning Commission does not automatically have to rubber stamp a permitted use. It's a permissible use, but you have to look at the location of what that is and how it will affect people surrounding that area. So what you do next, if you go to the third page of what I've given you, are the standards of review. The following design standards of review shall serve as guidelines to assist you all and staff to consider when reviewing proposed building improvement applications within this zoning district. The proposed improvements should be guided and support the following standards. Protect and enhance the physical character of the area within the Milford River District, and ensure that, prevent the deterioration of property and nuisance conditions. And this is the big one. Ensure that renovations, expansions, and new infill developments do not adversely affect the physical character of the area overall, nor adversely affect the quality of life for residential inhabitants located in and within close proximity to the district. They aren't doing this here. They admitted themselves that they don't care. They're going to open the doors. They're going to have bands going. They're going to have noise, and that's the way it is. And they're stating that based upon the noise ordinance. But you as the Planning Commission can stop that. And how can you do that? Well, if you look at C, one of the following 4 actions may be taken by you for those building improvement applications. You can rubber stamp it, but it's not going to, do anything about the noise that's going to be coming from that center. The second thing that you can do is you can approve it with conditions. I would propose that if you do approve this, it should have no garage doors on the backside at all. That it should have stationary windows that can be opened in an emergency situation, and egress doors that automatically close, regular sized doors. If you have these garage doors and garage windows, if they have 5 of them, mind you, on the back of this, they have stated it, they will roll them up, they will keep them open. You will have 300 patrons inside for a wedding and bands playing next to a brewery with bands playing. The location's already congested. The location's surrounded by residential properties in Milford on Mound Street, Worcester Pike, in the apartments on Water Street, Terrace Park, and Indian Hill. There are, as I said, 5 garage doors that they plan on opening. Not to mention that they really don't seem to care that there are other businesses like the distillery and using any potential spots that the distillery or other businesses could use are going to be used up because they only have 75 extra spots for 300 patrons. We want Milford to grow, but grow in a way that you envisioned. And that's what you guys envisioned it in here. You wrote these, where residential, business, bars, and restaurants can live together. This is not an entertainment district. This is the Milford River District, which allows for and encourages a broad mix of uses while respecting the district's historic context and the residents around it. That does not mean having loud band music with open doors in side-by-side venues with traffic and noise emanating. It's about people enjoying a beer, listening to the river, and walking safely from
constantly be berated with the trespass. The other thing I would say in the vision, think about as you develop that event center and all that, are you going to want to have a sit-down restaurant in close proximity to that? Do you think anyone's going to want to have outdoor dining when they've got a rock band playing next door, just pounding music at them? Think about the people and how this is going to overall develop. And we would hope that you would put some of these additional conditions in your consideration. Thank you.
Anyone else here in the room?
Good evening. My name is Eric Partee. I'm Executive Director of the Little Miami Conservancy, a nonprofit river conservation organization of about 400 members. I have provided testimony with you. I won't bore you with rereading all of that. But we do have some concerns about the riverfront, as you might expect. We have worked with numerous developers, landowners, local officials over the last 50 odd years to restore and preserve and clean up, deal with the dead fish that were floating down the river, water quality issues, acquire lands here in Milford as nature preserves. In fact, a good portion of what you see on the other side of the river, we were responsible for. We either currently own it or we bought it. Back in the days when Dave Spinney was manager here and Fred Gatch was mayor, Fred came to me and said, we're trying to negotiate with a guy by the name of Jim Seavey. He's an attorney downtown and he owns a bunch of acres over there across the river downstream from the bridge. See what you can do. So we did. We met with him. Jim winds up donating all that property to us with the exception of the parking lot, which is the current parking lot. And there was some money paid by us, our members, to him to make that deal happen. Over the next 5 years, we leased that property to the village and, or to the, I guess it was the village at the time, the city of Milford. And at the end of that time, we donated the property to the city. We thought it was the right thing to do. We thought there was an understanding that it would be preserved and would be a great natural gem for the river. We're thrilled that it's named after Mr. Terrell and attended the dedication ceremony. So we have a bit of history. On the east side of the river, and with apologies to everyone here, we'd hope to put some things up on the screen. It's been a lot more problematic from the standpoint of the riverbank areas. For those of you that have been around for a few decades, we understand, you remember how much erosion was going on along the Little Miami. Riverside Park was all eroded out. We worked with Loretta Roque at the time, pulled together some public funds to restore that and plant it full of trees. And it is now full of trees, perhaps not as deep as we would like, but it is a stable bank once again, all because of something as simple and as cost effective as trees. Who cares about trees? Well, they serve a purpose. Let's go on downstream a little bit. Claremont Lumber, another kind of site where there wasn't a good forest buffer in that area. There were buildings, there was lumber, and Mr. Critchell, made a good living, I think, at Claremont Lumber, and more power to him. But again, the erosion started. There was not a good amount of tree root mass in those banks to hold it together, and the sand and gravel and the makeup of the soils, away it went. Village, we worked with City Council and Loretta at the time to get the money to both, again, get the taxpayer money again to fix that situation. Now it's 120 foot deep, which frankly is our preferred width of buffer in these kind of situations, and a very stable situation, full of trees and growing by the day. So there are pictures here in the testimony about those pictures that I took back then that show all of this erosion. I mention these because whenever we look at riverbank areas, and particularly in Milford, and I hate to quite say it this way, but Milford, if you look at all the communities up and down the river, the most erosion that happens along the Little Miami in downtown areas is in Milford. Casting aspersions, but it has worked out that way. So as we learned of the new proposal, understandably, our first concern was regards to the riverbank area and the trees. And long story short, what we're proposing is that there be a 50-foot zone, 50-foot deep zone along the property. Lots of sycamores. We'd had conversations back in 2012 about sycamore trees and planting more sycamores. I'd like to pick that up again and see more sycamores and native trees planted on 10 to 15 foot spacings throughout that area, so we can really once again for the long term, get that bank stabilized. So frankly, it doesn't erode out. And the taxpayer, once again, is asked to cough up the money to resolve that. The only other bank project that is of note and happened back actually in the 1970s and down called the Mound Street Project on the Big Bend down below the bridge. And there's a photograph actually from 1917 of a gentleman and his son in a homemade John boat fishing the Little Miami right there, and the houses at the precipice of the slope there at Mound Street are shown there in the distance. Again, those were threatened. They were starting to fall in. The taxpayer comes back again. Back in the 70s, my recollection was the project was something like $750,000 to put in. Today, I don't have the CPI adjustments, but substantial. Long story short, I think it's very important for the Milford Riverfront that and we would recommend to you all that if you do approve this, that there'll be some serious consideration given to planting of that area. The placement of fill in the floodway is always gets to be problematic. We have seen numerous times up and down in Little Miami where dirt fill is brought in, it is compressed, it is stamped, it is put in place, and it washes out with the next big flood or the next big 2 or 3 floods. We've seen it at Peters Cartridge and other places along the river, relatively straight stretches of river. So we are concerned and would advise against that. I think from our standpoint, if we're looking at a 50-foot buffer, and again, if this is approved, the exact location of where the building and the patio is irrelevant as long as it's back beyond that 50-foot zone. We get the trees established and we don't want to run through that. We've been through this, 3 times now in Milford. The taxpayer's been through the ringer 3 times on it. Let's learn from the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Pat Chandler and I live at 43 Mound Avenue. And I thought this would be a good time to speak after the last speaker because my property abuts up to the development. And I'm the one that asked him to come out and look at that because the tributary that I'm talking about, if it stays open, it doesn't put as much pressure on my hillside where I live 90 feet on top of a hill just past the brewery. Now, and it's not only going to affect my house, but also all my neighbors' house down on Mount Avenue. And this has been my issue for 8 years with the developers. And for 8 years, we've, thank God Pam's still here, that we've had the thing filled in and then we have it taken out. 4 years ago, I had a bunch of logs in there. They're gone now. And now we got dirt and rocks and I'm sure those are going to be moved. And I'm sure when the project is finished, it's going to look nice next to us. But that is another issue. That's my main issue why I was here today is that tributary and whatever happens upstream, it's going to affect us downstream. And so I'm glad to see that people are keeping an eye on what's going on in the riverbank. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Len Harding. I live in Milford. I've lived here most of my life. Moved here with my parents in 1947, and my dad was born on Laurel Avenue. So yeah, I've been around here a lot. And the first thing I want to point out is that Milford used to be a very, very vibrant town. And then for maybe 30 years, it was dead. We had downtown with empty stores. We had used bookstores. We had all manner of things. In fact, the only place that was making money for all that time was the gun store. But the issue is now that Milford is thriving again, it's a much different place. And so we're really caught somewhere between a rock and a hard place because to have all these businesses go, you've got to have traffic. You've got to have foot traffic. You've got to have people in, and you've got to have businesses that will attract people. And Milford has quite a few nice restaurants, bars, and I see this as kind of an extension of the Little Miami Brewery, but I'm a little bit concerned that we sort of jam ourselves into a situation we need not be in. So the first thing I want to address is the development itself. Yes, development is needed. I've often said, and I'll say it again, Milford needs 10,000 people to keep its political heft in the state doing of things. It just needs the people. That's all there is to it. Right now, what are we, about 6, not quite 7?
About 6,800.
Yeah. So we're always on the edge, and I'm always thinking, well, let's get some more people in here. We've closed down schools. Instead of having something clever to do with the school, we turned it into a very flat piece of ground. Why? Because we couldn't agree on anything. And I always think that this deserves much more of a discussion among the people than we can possibly have here, and having people get assaulted, but their ears, that is. And if it goes to court over something like this, the city's going to be out money either way if it goes to court, win or lose. Mr. Rowe has been somewhat mischaracterized. I know of a lot of people in this room, and I don't think very many of them have much more affection and interest in Milford than he does. I am a former trustee of the Milford Library building. That building, we all know where that is. Just you come across the room. It's got the Milford Mystery Library, little peg there, play for that. And it didn't have, and as being trustee, I was always aware of the fact that we didn't have much money. We weren't collecting much money. The Milford Library doesn't make any money. And yet, legally, you're responsible for that building. And I was looking around for someone to help because Lou Gratz, the other trustee, was leaving. And I cornered Dale with the idea of getting him on the board. Let it come out of his pocket, not mine. But the trick is, Dale I didn't know he had an interest in the building. He wanted it, he bought it, and he's given the library a 300-year lease. Isn't that what it is, 300 years? Yeah. And I think he's taking care of that. I've walked through it with him a couple of times. He's doing a pretty good job in there. So this is not somebody who wants to trash it up. He just is not going to do that. The other thing is, this is an event hall, and unless I'm missing my guess, we don't have weekly or nightly gatherings there. It's going to be an event, and unless you guys rent it to a church, and that's what happened around here when Milford was dead. A lot of churches moved in and took that storefront property. Do we want that again? Are you not going to rent it to a church? Right. Are you going to rent it to a church?
If they want to.
The whole service is there every Sunday?
Oh, I don't know about every Sunday. but
Okay.
Church has a wedding. And
Sure. Yeah, everybody. But the point is, if you're going to scrape all the ground off, my goodness, we've got all kinds of places around here that can say, you need to put deep-rooted plants in there. The place is full of them. If nothing else, you can put the honeysuckle there. My God, that's deep-rooted. So it's not that bad. And when we talk about the Conservancy down on South Milford, I think the instruction there is the people in South Milford were fighting off a developer twice. And the second time we got him to say no, we got the city to say no to him. He wanted to put 300 homes down there in the area. But the second time it happened, a group of South Milford neighborhood people, and I'm proud to say I was one of them, got together and decided, well, we're just not going to be able to say no. We don't want you to use your property in a way that bothers us. So we got together and we bought it. And the city of Milford was very sweet to us on that, because the people, the neighborhood bought the land, but the money was borrowed using the city of Milford's credit. And all we really had to do was pay the interest off every quarter, which got to be kind of fun. But I don't know, we had that thing for 2 or 3 years that we did that until we got a grant from the ODNR. Yeah. And now it's a wonderful place. It's a concern. It's great. You can do that. But the point is, if you really want it to do what you want it to do, you got to buy it. And that's the other thing, and I'll just close with this, is that everybody in this room, I look around and I'm betting that 2/3 of the people in this room are Republicans and they vote for these clowns that we put up there all the time. But the thing is, you vote for these Republicans and they're the ones who make it so that, I'm sure everybody in this room knows what takings are. What's a taking? That is, if somebody buys land and he wants to use it and you won't let him, and you refuse to let him, he can take you to court. In this case, it would be the city of Milford. Say again, please. Oh, okay. But the truth is that you started taking suit, and the city has got to say, well, if we're not going to let him use this, and he's projected revenue from it, and he's got this value on it, you have to pay him the difference. Do you really want to do that? These people have threatened us with lawsuits, threatened us because I'm a taxpayer in this city too. And as I say, I have very warm regards for the Rowe family. They have done a very nice thing to a building that has been in the city, and the library is sitting there for free, fat and happy, I hope. And so to characterize him as someone who cares not for others is just wrong. That's all, just wrong. Is he a hard-headed businessman? I'd be willing to bet that. Will he go to court? You can bet on that too, I'm pretty sure. So when you're doing this, understand that we have an issue. He owns the land. He's got a way to make it worthwhile. And if you're not going to let him do that, you got to come up and say it. South Milford came up with a rather novel plan. We'll buy the land. And the land's for sale. He'll sell it to you. I'm willing to bet. But let's not just sit here and willy-nilly say no, because I don't think, and I sat in on this last hearing, the noise is gone after 10 o'clock. And if you live in South Milford, you know all about the gun club. You know all about the Texas Roadhouse. You know all about I-70, 275, because that traffic never stops. That's the price of living here. And as I say, a long-term resident, I'd rather we grew a little more than get into another lawsuit. Those things are expensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Pam, do we have any Zoom participants that want to comment?
I have one.
Okay.
Are we ready for her to speak?
Yes, if.
Mute. Hi. Yes, hi, this is Caroline Good of 16 Wooster Pike. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. I basically wanted to just reiterate kind of as what Addy Kelly had said. I agree with all her points. I think that living across the river from the brewery, we brought up about the noise issues before. And I think that the biggest, again, the biggest concern is, the way that the building is is being developed with the garage doors. And I know that when we had that meeting before, that was what was stipulated, that the garage doors would have to be closed whenever loud music. I have not, unfortunately, been able to see the plans for the event center. I didn't get a chance to look at that, the design and stuff. But again, we're not against development either. I think that that's not how we like to portray it. But I mean, the noise issue, you can say, yes, you need to bring traffic into Milford. I agree with that. And I think that, places like the brewery and the distillery, those are great places. They're going to bring in a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot more walking traffic. That's wonderful. But with the noise, you really have to weigh that against that could actually be detrimental. It's going to harm other businesses as well. I mean, you're saying that you have the brewery and, it's bringing in all this business, but then if the brewery is bringing in bands and the event center has all this loud music and these loud events, it's detrimental to other businesses like the distillery or surrounding residences and surrounding businesses. So that's just something to kind of really consider. And that's really basically kind of all that I have to really say, is just kind of, I mean, we are directly impacted living right across the river from the brewery. And so, that's an important thing. I mean, we like to see businesses, we just don't want to see. And I think that it's very reasonable to say you can design these businesses and make sure that the noise is mitigated. And that's just the design of the building, and just keep the noise within the confines of the building. And then there won't be this problem. So anyway, that's my statement for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The applicant have follow-up information in regard to some of the questions and comments, please.
We've heard parking may be an issue here. Should the event center need additional parking, we have alternate offsite parking available. We have a lot at Elm and Water, another 40 stalls. We have a lot a little bit further down on Locust Street, another 20 stalls. We have the old mill building. We work out something there. We have tenants in the building that need access to parking, but such hours as the event center is going to hold events, those stalls may be available. Our River Row development across the street from the brewery, we are in the process of switching to planned development for residential condos there. We no longer have a fully intended use for commercial space. That's really going to lighten up the parking load. That's really going to lighten up the traffic load as a result of that development there. We may have a commercial condo option available to us on the first floor, but the upper two floors will be residential, and even the first floor may be residential as well. That plan development application was submitted about 2 weeks ago, so that's in process right now. The Millcroft collection that was approved about a year ago, that is an 11,400 square foot facility. That facility is going to have a potential occupancy, according to their code summary, of 799 people spread across 3 floors and a basement. And Planning Commission approved the site plan with an on-site parking count of 10 spaces and 1 ADA space. So look at our ratio here. This is significantly skewed, much denser parking available to the event center than what we have at the Millcroft, plus our alternative parking options that I'm sure we can work out with Dan and Joe should those be required. Additionally, the uses in the Millcroft include a restaurant, a bar, a tasting room, kitchen and coffee shop, offices, 2 banquet rooms, storage areas, rooftop deck, bar, outdoor seating, you name it, it has it. a lot more than what we simply are providing with the event center. That's just one of the 6 or 7 different uses in the Millcroft. We had some traffic studies completed a few years ago for the Mill and Water intersection. Obviously, the signaling and the widening of the road there was completed. That study included, at the time where this event center is going, we had planned 32-bedroom apartment units there. And that, amounted to 18 a.m. peak hour trips, 34 p.m. peak hour trips. Now, I mean, that should in essence be, discounted or credited to what the event center is going to do as far as increasing these peak hour trips, which I only see being a problem maybe on a Friday evening. Otherwise, these are largely going to be weekend events. They may be, later in the hours in the evening, or it's not even going to, add to the congestion of traffic that we see in the later part of the afternoons, early evenings. And per our consultant, given the bridge, Mill Street, Main Street, the existing building placements allow for limited, hardly any right-of-way expansions. Everything's bottlenecked on both sides. The only thing the consultant said that could be done would be signaling improvements as far as the timing goes of switching lights red, green, turn signals, whatnot. No real capacity improvements. We talked about the floodplain permit application that's been submitted to Kleinger's, who's the city engineer, concerning the riverbank slope and the comments from Eric Partee at LMC. He noted that a handful of trees will not adequately prevent the river meandering and erosion. We have a professionally engineered reinforced riverbank slope design that's been completed. Okay, that calls for primary geogrid reinforcing 30-foot wide layers installed at 4-foot vertical spacings between elevations 504 and 516. There are secondary geogrid reinforcing layers between elevations 506 and 518 installed basically in between the primary spacings. Below 508, we have riprap. Above 508, we have seeding and landscape plantings per the landscape design. This slope doesn't need the trees, although we want the trees. We're going to add some trees in there. Our landscape design shows it, but they're not necessary. This slope can support itself given the reinforcement design that a professional engineer has signed off on, designed. It also has bench drains. There's an active beaver problem on this river. I've got a number of pictures, 20 pictures I sent to Pam this morning. I brought this up a year ago. You guys, beavers are a major problem down there. I like the wildlife, but when beavers are removing trees from the riverbank, what are we going to do about it? That's a touchy environmental topic there. There's a lot of felled trees. You can see them gnawing to points. It's a problem, and we are not. Right now, they're winning, the tree removal, game. They're really causing a lot of destruction. There were a couple trees that they had chewed on near the bridge. And I think Milford's maintenance department had to remove a couple trees for fear of those falling on the bridge, coming in conflict with traffic. So that's a problem. I don't know what we can do about it. I don't know what Mr. Partee can do about the beavers, but that's a problem down there too.
Excuse me, folks, we got to keep, thank you. Thank you. Len,
Oh,
hang on.
They'll starve. They'll cut. The teeth grow and they can't eat.
The Milford Comprehensive Plan, I touched on this before, it promotes redevelopment of downtown. Okay, there's going to be traffic impacts when that happens. It calls for the repositioning of downtown as an entertainment district. Okay, yes, the district is not defined as an entertainment district, but the strategies and the end goals of this district reference this comprehensive plan. That there were several. I don't know who was on the committee that developed that plan, but that's what the plan's calling for. As far as Terrace Park is concerned, I'm a resident in Terrace Park. what their opinion is of the sound. I called the village administrator, also police chief Jerry Hayhow. There have been absolutely zero complaints against the brewery in all facets, sound included. They also don't have a sound ordinance, and if they did, Chief Hayhow commented that the village ordinances only apply to within the Terrace Park boundary limits. They would have no jurisdiction, in essence, onto what's happening with the brewery. So those are just a few things I wanted to add. Is there anything I can answer question-wise from Planning Commission?
What is the setback from the river footage?
I don't know what that setback is, but exactly. But if we were to move the building to the 50-foot setback that Mr. Partee is suggesting, that will basically probably destroy the project. We had a lot of time invested talking to the fire department about their apparatus access to the building, to the portico, how they can get turned around in there. If we do that, we're going to have to reconfigure the entire lot layout. We're going to lose parking stalls. The building's placement won't be ideal. I don't think the project would happen if we had to do that. So we're sensitive to the river. We're doing as much as we can to preserve the slope, prevent erosion, make it nice with trees and plantings. The river's the asset. Without this river, I don't know what the brewery would be, if anything. I don't know what this event center would be. So we have to take it seriously. If it causes major problems, then, we're out several $1 million worth of improvements there. So.
May I ask a question of someone else in the audience, or do we wait?
We'll see if there's any more questions for the applicant first. Anything else for the applicant at this time?
All right, thank you.
You'd like to call someone?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up with Mr. Partee, please, if you could step up. Thank you.
We'll figure out how to get rid of those beaver.
Mr. Partee, thank you. I want to address what Mr. Rowe was saying about the 50-foot that you had recommended, 50 plus feet, I think it was.
I think it was 50.
50.
Yeah.
What was that based on, and is there an allowance there at all?
When we look at bank stability, and we've been looking at this for a number of decades up and down the whole river, and talking with ODNR and EPA and the Corps and National Park Service, et cetera, there is a general consensus amongst that group that basically a 120-foot buffer in terms of long-term bank stability, tree growth, small sapling, big trees falling, little ones replacing them, all the dynamics that go on that sometimes you don't think about, the 120 zone. Now, we look at downtown areas and we say, well, gee, 120, how could you possibly do 120? And we were able to do 120 there at the River Flats project. And I believe there's a 120 requirement actually at Riverside, which we should probably talk about. So the 120 is something. Now in downtown areas, Loveland, for example, has a 50-foot wide buffer zone, protects it. You can't go in and clear cut trees and so forth and that sort of thing. I think there's some commonality here with the village of Milford. You get into 120 on small lots, you get into legal issues, you get into takings issues and all of that. And as much as you'd like to see it, the reality is that that's not going to happen. So that's why we come down to 50 as a compromise, if you will, as something that we think still has a positive impact and is worth doing.
Does that, in your opinion, does that take into account what Hank was talking about regarding the professional grade geogrid reinforcing? If they did that, does that mitigate some of that distance at all?
I haven't seen that design. I have a civil engineering degree, but I'm not practicing, so I don't know that I'm overly qualified to challenge,
All right.
the certified. I'll admit to that. In looking at that 50-foot zone and my scaling off of the distance between the edge of the water and I believe the edge of the patio, that I believe was a 50-foot distance. So the 50-foot gets down to, what happens within the 50-foot, basically.
Okay.
Along the river. Is there an opportunity here to reestablish a lot of trees in that area? We understand that there will be a desire for a view, just like at the brewery. People like to sit there and look down at the water. I get that, and we see it at Foster with the Whistle Stop or the Monkey Bar. Great name. I just love that name. And we get that, but we'd like to see a balance, if you will, that as you are looking from the other side of the river or from the river itself, it's something other than building. It's a softer view, primarily of trees and without the beaver, and so we think we think there would still be a view of the waters of the beautiful scenic Little Miami, even with our recommendation for plantings.
Thank you.
Eric, is the 50-foot measured from the edge of water? Is that where you're measuring?
There
from?
was an edge of water, I think, marked on
There is.
on your drawings, and we're willing to, that's,
All right.
I don't have an alternative line to look at.
Hank, do you want to respond to that at all? Do you need to? Yeah.
I don't know what we have at the brewery as far as the 50-foot setback is concerned, but that brewery is on a 2-to-1 slope to the river. That's what we have proposed. There were no improvements made on the brewery slope, riverbank. Everything's fine, nothing's shifting. There's no major erosion going on there. We improved the riverbank by eradicating the invasive honeysuckle. I think there was a challenge from somebody in this room that we basically clear the entire riverbank, which was not the case. We removed the invasive honeysuckle. I believe Mr. Partee applauded our efforts for doing so. The river walk, Little Miami River stabilization. Guess who the contractor was that worked for the city of Milford? It was DER. We did that project. We know how to handle riverbank stabilizations, riprap. It's working, river walk is not eroding. Everything's growing well, so we know, we are sensitive to that. We know how to, build along riverbanks.
And did I hear correctly that there would be, I don't want to misstate this, added vegetation to that embankment?
Yeah, there's grading that we need to do there to create our slope, and then excavation for this geogrid reinforcing. But then the landscape design we have provided adds back plantings there, because we don't want a barren, slope there, riverbank. We want it to be vegetated and look nice.
All right. Thank you.
All right, open up discussion by Planning Commission.
Well, as you saw, my biggest concern has been the hillside riverbank integrity. I happen to do some consulting work for the Hillside Trust. So Mr. Partee's probably heard of them. And for the long-term health of a city based on a river, we're a river town. If you don't take care of that, all the charm starts eroding away from the river in. So that's a really big concern of mine. It seems to be, from what I've heard, that there's some mitigation going on that can resolve any of those issues, and in fact, make it better than it is now. So I'm hoping that's the case. The other issue that the second point I had was, in my notes, was noise control. Sean Sutter, the attorney representing the Savage family, I think he made a good point regarding, and the real estate lady here, former prosecuting attorney, made a good point regarding the noise ordinance, which I've had an issue with myself, that I don't think it's an ordinance. It doesn't have all the requirements of what I think is an ordinance. That's an issue for city council, obviously not planning commission, but it does make clear that, to me at least, that we're not really addressing noise the way we should be in an area that carries sound so well. So I'd like to see some discussion around that, if there's any conditions or mitigations that we can apply to make that a better situation for the neighbors without ruining what is an event center. And you want to be outside looking at a river. So, you know, there's got to be some balance there. Those are my biggest points, I think, that I wanted to discuss with you guys.
As it relates to, I'm thinking about the physics of sound here. Shy of significant mass and early absorption, it's really difficult to mitigate sound once it gets loose.
Right.
And we're talking about within feet. It's really tough. As it relates to garage doors or no garage doors and whether they're open or closed, I could see the lack of garage doors or anything like that as being a significant inhibitor to the utility of the event center. I don't see it as being within our purview to, we certainly cannot legislate the noise ordinance or reconfigure it. And so it kind of escalates upwards from us, I think, as far as the behaviors or actions of the occupants. As it relates to our purview of the, within looking at the plans and regulations of the city and how those are influenced by the development. Actually, there are, as we've seen in so many times in recent years, there are a myriad of choices, a myriad of opportunities, but very few options that actually have ways forward because somebody doesn't step up to actually make them happen. I find that if anything, the step back and significant retreat of the development from the Main Street actually preserves Main Street and preserves Main Street's character. I think that if anything, it is becoming possibly, if you're going to, I can't see many pedestrians going to the event center, possibly driving up for the most part, and bicycle rack notwithstanding. So I see it as a positive functionality to establish for the city. Something that we are not currently supporting as a city or as a developed area. You could say what you might about, say, the Legion Hall or such as that, but you know, this is the city is coming, and I think this is a good accommodation for our future as far as functionality.
Thanks, John. Comments from this side of the desk?
I think I agree on the noise thing. It'll have to come back to council and we'll have to revisit it if needed.
Well, I have John Winstrup, 14 Cleveland Avenue. I have I've been amazed at the success of the brewery and the rebirth of our downtown. And, you know, it comes with a price. If you live in a ghost town, of course, it's quiet and peaceful. And if now you have a boom town, it's going to be noisy. And at least within the framework of these meetings, I've always found the gentleman presenting this request to be open and willing to try to respect the neighbors. And I live on reason I said 14 Cleveland. I live in South Milford, and protecting that character, the old South Milford neighborhood district, from being spoiled by the River District is a balance. And so noise is an issue, and I don't know how you mitigate that. And I don't know how you make somebody keep a window down when everybody's sweating their keister off at a wedding reception and somebody decides to open one. I don't know how you maintain social distancing when they lift the requirement that you can't go to a bar and people are on top of each other. I mean, get away from each other. You know, it's a good thing to have success, but there's enough success in the development in downtown Milford. And when I say development in downtown Milford, I'm really speaking to DER and the beer and enjoyment business. And I'm speaking to you guys, there's enough revenue in there to try to spend some money to mitigate the issues for your neighbors. And you've expressed a willingness to do that. There's been opportunities to buy that property for other people. You could have bought it. You could have bought it. You could have bought it. I couldn't have bought it. But, you know, maybe you guys could have bought it. But I think we have to address all the things to the best of our effort, but it's your property. And within the laws and rules and regulations of our village, if you're developing it with that, anything over and above that, people should be grateful that you're doing that. And I know that's hard to swallow for some people, but it's wonderful when your neighbor decides, hey, they're finally going to paint that old house. And then they tell you they're going to paint it zebra stripes. And it's like, well, you know, these aren't zebra stripes. This is growing pains. The riverbank with the reinforcement, you asked the exact question I wanted to ask. With that reinforcement, does it allow us to do 35 or 37.6? Does it give us a little creativity to really ensure the river? Because we all know that's in everybody's best interest. Without that river there, you'd just be another brewery along a highway. Your property would not be the property that it is. So we want to protect the river, and I want to see just a closer look at that. I'd like to see a closer look at that from an environmental standpoint. What can we do without making the project precipitously financially successful? Noise, you got to deal with noise. Your neighbor that's got a little tributary that runs down there, I don't know why stuff keeps getting dumped in his property, but stop dumping stuff in his property. That's not, you know, you can't be there every time somebody's there with a backloader, but obviously it's kind of pissing him off. Yeah, we got to deal with the noise. So the noise, this is the first time I've seen the noise document. We talked about it in these meetings, talked about decibels. Then your police or whoever reinforced it has to carry around a thing to see how loud it is. It's really difficult to enforce a noise ordinance. The best thing is to be a good neighborism, and that's hard to come by. How do you say, you know, it's really loud and we're trying to go to sleep, and how do you go out and tell the guy on the guitar to turn it down because the people talking are drowning him out and he can't hear himself play, so he turns it up? You know, that's tough no matter where you go. A noise ordinance can't do what good neighboring can do. And that comes from both sides of the river. It just has to. I can live with it being noisy during frontier days. I can hear the river. I can deal with it when music playing down there. It quits at 10:30. That's not a problem for me. And if it is a problem for me, I got these little beautiful orange earplugs. I put them in and go to sleep. I don't worry about that. We can't engineer every space that's next to each other to make everybody happy, but we can do what we can on both sides of the river to mitigate the problem. And I see a lot of effort coming from the developer to try to mitigate these problems, particularly with the brewery. And so I do think that they have made effort. Have I seen lapses? Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, it got kind of noisy there. They left the door open or something, you know, but for the most part, I think everybody here wants the same stuff. A little quieter, nice vibrant city, still good neighborhoods, up on the hill, up in South Milford. Work on the noise, look on the river. I think development's lovely.
What about the soundproofing in the new part? I know it doesn't look beautiful, but are there any considerations you can put into the ceiling of the main hall to help with the noise, like you did on the new patio?
If I might jump on the back of that, early intercept of the noise is always to your benefit. So that's kind of what it would boil down to. I think that's what
And
you're
the new
talking
patio
about.
doesn't look beautiful, but like, is there something else you could put, another kind of tile you could
Yeah.
use that would help with the noise?
Yeah, there's I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say
Yeah.
that's a great idea. There's also a balance there between indoor aesthetics that a bride's going to want
Right.
versus a
Need that
bar.
balance.
And of course,
So
the
it's like,
expense.
whoa, you know?
Because as I said, it doesn't look beautiful.
Yeah.
Mark Breedemeyer, KBA Architects, 29 High Street, Milford, Ohio. The product you're referring to is more to control reverberation inside of the facility rather than to mitigate sound going through the roof. In terms of the wall construction, it would be similar to what the addition is to the brewery, and the ceiling. I mean, we haven't gotten into the design of the ceiling. There are products that we can do. Obviously, it'll be insulated well as well.
Oftentimes the solution also starts to change the behaviors. If you absorb more and intercept early, the amplifiers get turned up.
Right.
I've seen this.
And we will have hard surfaces in the building, so we will want to dampen that sound somewhat, similar to what we did with the addition.
Even maybe band location, if the band's back.
Which way it's
back by the
facing.
windows versus up at the front of the hall, you know. like that.
These all become behavior issues, and I don't really know how it's within our purview to stipulate or regulate that from
That's just a good neighborhood.
this point.
I can tell you that I think the way the band is planned to set up would be advantageous. It would not be faced towards the river. I think our intent is to face the long axis of the building.
It's good.
Thank you.
Good.
Lois, it looks like Carolyn's hand is up, so I'm not sure if she wants to say anything. Can we,
Sure.
Can I check with her?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes, hi.
Hi,
Hi.
did you want to speak?
Yeah, just real briefly. I did forget to bring up about the issue of the kayakers and the boaters along the Little Miami River. I know that there has been an increase in the kayak traffic, and I know that originally when the brewery came, I had addressed that issue. I was concerned that there was going to be a lot of the kayakers parking on the riverbank and trailing up the side to go to the brewery. And that is indeed happening. And I know that the kayakers, that's good business, you know, they want the money from the kayakers and everything like that. But then when you were talking about the degrade of the erosion of the hill, that contributes to that. It's also a very dangerous liability, I think, for all the kayakers coming up, putting their boats up right at the bottom of the brewery I know that this is about the event center, but this is continuing. And having all of those kayakers coming up that hill and down the hill, I think there's a liability issue. Also, I know that and I think this has been addressed with regards to people jumping from the bridge. And I know that that is apparently, hopefully being addressed, but I'm just saying that's another issue. I saw a video the other day of one of the persons jumping off of the bridge, and it was actually on the side of the brewery. So, I mean, there's some liability issues. I don't know if it's more for Milford or if it's for the brewery, but it's just something, you know, to be considered, you know, that's an issue with the the whole thing with the kayakers and the traffic and all that other kind of stuff. I just wanted to point that out. That's my only statement. Thank you.
Thank you. So this request is a site plan review. Reviewing plans related to the development of the site, which does include whether the use is permitted, but definitely landscaping, parking, lighting, buffering. Obviously, as a river town, we're very sensitive to the river. I am not an engineer. We have one on staff. I would defer to the engineering professionals to make sure that we're doing all that we can to protect that riverbank. It's the asset for the event center. It's an asset for the city. And just a couple of weeks ago, the river was at that parking lot at Terrell Park. It was kind of interesting to see that how you walk in that park when it's dry and you think the water got these stumps and trees up here somehow. And then you go when it's like, oh, I see how now. So the water's going to do what the water's going to do. And we rely on the engineers to do institute best practices to make sure that we're protecting property and life there. The building, I think, fits in with the character as far as the design, the aesthetic of the historic downtown. I would concur the fact that it's not a main street front building. You can see it through building openings, but it's not right on Main Street, that it can have a slightly different character than it would if it were a storefront. And I think they've done a good job achieving that with their design. Any additional landscaping to beef up that required buffering along all the residential, adjoining residential properties is critical. Trees between the building and the river can be an asset as well as an impediment to the view. So we appreciate anything that can be done there. In reviewing this project as a site plan, I certainly looked at the zoning code. The zoning code specifically refers me to the comprehensive plan when considering development within the Milford River District. So I also looked at the comprehensive plan with regard to what the vision for that area is. A rental hall or an entertainment event center is appropriate based on the comprehensive plan. It's permitted use in the River District. With regard to the noise ordinance passed by council, they are the policy-making body for the city. This body doesn't make policy. We enforce the policies and the rules and regulations that are enacted by council. Do I wish it was beefier? Certainly. But those issues need to be taken to city council to address. At the point where we had nothing, we did our best. But said, if the city passes something, it'll supersede anything that any condition that we've placed. I would echo what my fellow commissioners have said with regard to being a good neighbor. And we would trust that the operators of the event center and the operators of the brewery would do their best to be that good neighbor. But we can't legislate good neighborliness from our seats here. So I guess the only thing I would add to staff's condition is just to address additional buffering and landscaping along the entire adjoining border to residential zones. There's that one area kind of to the south that looks like the clearing has eliminated the existing trees, and some additional buffering would be beneficial there to be in compliance with the zoning code.
I just thought of one more question. Can I
Sure,
ask it?
yeah.
I think I read it in the neighborhood meeting comments about some kind of fencing or something to separate the property from the Mound Avenue properties. Will there be anything saying like you're leaving the property, or so if people are out wandering around outside the center, they won't walk up onto Mound Avenue property? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it hasn't been discussed, but I understand what you're saying.
There was several comments about marking the
Fencing.
property line,
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
but not fencing itself.
Just some kind of,
I think the comment, I think I saw those too. Thanks for reminding me. And it was, people were on other people's property, not property that belongs to either one of you. And they were smoking pot, making out, and, all the stuff you do when you go as far away from what you need to get away from to do what you want to do. And of course, they felt that wasn't really too cool on their personal property. So how you do that without creating some ugly wall or something, I don't know. But certainly there is spillover from our downtown. There's people that come and park on Cleveland and Mount. Is it horrible? No. But it's, it spills over into our neighborhoods, and it spills over into people's backyards when somebody wants to get far enough away from there so they can smoke a reefer. If that's what they do, that's what they do. But if there's any way to protect that, it would be appreciated by your neighbors. I think that's the message we want to make clear to you, and make clear to you that we're discussing it, just like sound. We don't want to try to contain it so that it doesn't spoil the residential enjoyment of two very nice neighborhoods, the people up on Park and the people in South Milford. So.
Yes,
Again, I'm Pat Chandler. I'm at 43 Mound, and I did have that complaint issue when I complained about the people, because I'm neighbors to the brewers, and people were coming down along the river onto my property. And first group was a group of kids climbing on the trees, and I was worried about, they're going to fall, get hurt. Then, the other thing, like we just talked about, is going to happen, and that's something that we can work on once we get the project finished. So, I have no trespassing signs, and it's all marked, but eventually there's nothing there right now. And that's why I'm sure we can get together and solve that problem.
okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question for the commission that I just don't understand. And that is, when we were here 2 years ago, and again last year, this very commission placed conditions for sound mitigation. And that was within the purview to take steps. Now, while we all hope we're good neighbors, let me just assure you, sometimes you have to take steps to make that happen. And so I'm asking you to consider some of those sound mitigation conditions as part of this.
Could you come back to the podium for a second? Mr. Addy, the conditions we put in for the brewery, okay, prior to this noise document, were those effective? Were they helpful? Did they ameliorate it in some degree?
They did, because the garage doors were closed.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Could you, yeah.
When we had that, we had 10 of them.
Could you come up and talk to that? Because I think that's a good neighborly discussion to have right here.
Runner 208 Mill Street. I think when first conversations came about, is we didn't really have garage doors back then. We just had that tent. And that's why the noise was even more of an issue.
Yeah.
So.
But I think once the doors were there, they're saying that it really helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you do have doors on the riverside of this development.
Right, and we close those when we have music there. Those the big windows, yes.
And do you need more than, I mean, we don't need to restrict that at any point, at this point, because you understand it's a problem. Wait a minute. We understand it's a problem. We understand you went to a great expense, which means the business must be doing good, so that's good. But it may be that we'd have to put a similar, I don't believe you make rules just to make rules, but it may be that we have to come back and make a similar restriction, if it becomes problematic.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't see why you would do it.
We'll follow whatever they come, say, we're willing to,
That's what I thought. Okay, I'm sorry. You wanted to say something, ma'am?
No, what I'm saying is that.
Miss Addy, you're going to have to come to the podium. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Joe.
Kelly Addy, in the neighborhood meeting, they flat out stated they will not keep the doors down in the new event center, that they will put up the doors during weddings and parties and bands playing. They were specifically asked that, and they specifically said they would keep the doors up. That's what the major problem is.
The new city ordinance allows for that, though.
Okay.
Right. So therefore the problem.
Well, that's something that council will have to
Yeah,
address.
it's not us.
And there's other variables at play as well. There were other variables in the experiment that were overlooked, specifically as it related to the absorbency within the band shell, if you will, and the fact that the tent was removed. I mean, we're talking about open air performance as opposed to, effectively open air performance in the tent versus almost a complete switch over to complete containment or optional containment, right, and early intercept absorption. There's a lot of variables that we're switching all at the same time. So it's really hard to put a finger on that one.
Dan Lynch, 208 Mill Street. Just to recap history, brewery opened in December 2017. We had a tent. The tent is where all the complaints about sound came. We proposed a structure that was open air on the bottom with a rooftop. We modified that plan and spent 3 times as much money to conceal a brick building, of which, as Joe said, although we're not required to, we do close the windows on the riverside. We have the garage door leading to our patio that we leave open. I don't think the complaints that came are back in history when there was a tent there. I mean, we've put in acoustical ceiling. We did, we did everything that we were asked to do. We've said and done and have abided by every regulation and law, including the new sound ordinance, which tells us when music has to be turned off. We follow that. So, and I think it's, I don't know, I just think it's disingenuous of some to kind of continue to label us for something that happened when there was a temporary tent there. That tent's been gone. It's over. That's all I want to say.
I just add to that. Very much appreciate those efforts, and it has worked. However, the problem is the 2 weeks ago, the statement was, we're going to open up those doors at the event center. That is a massive problem and is unacceptable. You keep the doors shut, we're good. You open them, not good, particularly when there's music going. Thank you.
I may suggest, this is my first look at the noise document, and it says there's absolutely no amplified sound from 10 p.m., after 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and after midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. So, you got to comply with that to begin with. But if you have an issue with the noise ordinance, I don't see how a violation is, somebody has to complain, I guess, after 10 o'clock. But if you have an issue with that, own property in Milford, I'd go to city council and, here's some areas I'm concerned about. But it comes here and we really can't do much about it. There you go.
We had 2 publicized meetings in January about establishing the noise ordinance.
Yeah.
So it was,
Was it well attended by members of the public?
nope.
Have we ever had
They were published meetings. I mean,
have we ever had anybody, because one of the comments that was made, and I'm just talking amongst ourselves here, is that, this noise is a problem for other businesses in downtown Milford. I've not heard here or anywhere else, Pam, you could help me maybe, that we've had any complaints from any of the other businesses in downtown Milford that the noise was problematic for them having the peaceful operation of their businesses. 20 Bricks, they sit people outside. Any of those places complain about this at all?
I'm not aware of any complaints. That's not to say the city manager, I would think he would have told me, but I'm not aware of any.
It's a small thing, but I don't want to heap that on top of the other challenges we have to resolve this. When they haven't stepped forward and presented anything, I don't think we can add that to that side of the story. And realistically, it's residents in Park, residents in South Milford. And that's enough to address, but we got to address that. And you've done a great job. We have to continue that with the other section, the other building, or it'll come back and bite us again. So
I do think noise is a problem for those neighbors. I really do. I believe them completely. However, we are in a situation here where we have an event center, which I believe is permissible. And how the hell do you have an event center with weddings with 300 people and not allow them to go outside and not allow them to party? It's just a crazy idea. It just goes away. So within the 20-year comprehensive plan, as Lois stated, Lois and I were both on that committee, and it is within the spirit and what we wanted in that comprehensive plan. So it fits there. I do believe that there is some issues with the noise ordinance that we have that could be improved, but I don't believe that's part of what we do. It isn't part of what we do. It's just not what we do on Planning Commission. That's a city council issue, and I would encourage you to go to city council and state your opinions there. What we can do, as this gentleman mentioned, is put conditions on a permissible use property or asset. And my thought is, from what I've seen in the past, in terms of the growth and the flexibility that you guys have shown, that does happen. It sometimes happen in halting starts and fits, but it has continued to happen, and they've showed a willingness to do that for the community. I also believe that, from what I'm hearing, that shutting those, I just don't think you can't do that on a project like this. It's just impossible. Just don't do it at all. Then, you can't have a successful venue that way. And what we're trying to do is place possible conditions, such as, can they come back with a detailed plan to just better explain what the sound mitigations are, as opposed to saying, yeah, we'll do that. I'd really like to hear details on that. That would be great. But other than that, it's a different purview for a different committee.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I went to the brew pub probably 2 weeks before it shut down. I had a friend's band who was playing there. And I sat in the new room. We had I took measurements with my audio decibel reading, and you guys, it was great. It wasn't that loud inside the room. I called my brother-in-law before he came down and said, can you hear anything up there? And he said, no, it was all good. You just got to keep it inside. If you want to have a band play at the wedding, which there's no if, you have to have a band with a wedding. There's no if, but you can't open those doors. We'll have problems, and we will have to come after you and you. We will have to, because you are taking
You talked about takings. It's taking away the value of my property. I've had this property for a long time. I want to build houses on it when my sister decides to do that. And I can't build a house and sell it if I got to put up with that racket. You understand that? Certainly do.
Okay. Is anyone, any further discussion or anyone prepared to make a motion?
Can that be a condition that we add on that they submit a sound plan?
Yeah, I would love to
With
see
everything
that
else?
as part of the conditions, but otherwise it is permissible what they're planning. So I personally don't
Do you-
interpret or read this as
Some
saying
kind
no.
of a sound plan. Would you be prepared to go ahead and approve this tonight?
I would approve it with the condition of just seeing details on what that sound plan
Sound.
is.
What type of
Would-
tiles they're gonna put in or
Yeah,
whatever?
I'm
I suggest
very
we-
prepared to approve
Who should
that.
they submit that to?
Since I'm sure they've considered this, can
Yeah.
you address that now?
Dan Lynch, 208 Mill Street. Let's just step back a minute. It's a brick building with an open ceiling. If you've ever been to a wedding, like in an industrial building, you have rafters, wood rafters that brides and their moms like to hang chandeliers from with swags and to make it really look festive. We're not talking about building a soundproof room. There's no sound plan. It's an open ceiling. We're over engineering this. It's just an open ceiling with rafters. There's garage doors. There's a bride room. There's a groom's room. There's a prep kitchen for the caterer. There's a lobby area, and there's a band and a band area and a dance stage. That's it. There's no, I mean, it's not what we went through on the brewery was because we had a tent for 2 years. And I can understand that we weren't maybe the best neighbors with that tent. We could probably do some things over again that we would have done differently. Okay. But now we have a structure, and Mr. Savage just thankfully complimented us on how we have voluntarily, not required, nobody legislated this, voluntarily, we closed the windows along the river. Okay. An event center is going to have band. The placement of the band and it's not on the back of if you have a glass, the river side, you're not going to put a band on the river side. That's where the river and the view and the patio is. So the band is not going to be right outside. Okay. So I think we're kind of forgetting some basics. So that's all I wanted to say, that the ceiling is an open wood beam ceiling and it's decorated the way the bride wants it decorated.
Yeah. Dan, I think what plan may have been the wrong word to use, but I would like details on, for example, what is it? Is there anything in the walls that reduce acoustics for the outside? Is there?
Let me let Mark.
Yeah, the
let
way
me
the
let the
band's
architect talk about
positioned,
that.
things
Yeah.
like that. I
The
just
band
like to know
placement
what
was
those
a big
are.
thing for me. So
That's over my
at
head.
The other end, that's.
Yeah, it's not on the river. The band isn't on the riverside. They're on another wall in the building. Okay. Or they might be facing the riverside. No, they won't be facing. That's right. Because you've got the bar. The layout that we have is a tentative layout, but the band isn't going on the riverside. Okay. As far as the materials in the walls and things like that, that's over my head. I'm gonna let Mark talk about that.
Okay.
Well, and actually, as we're at this stage, the site design and the overall building design, we haven't gotten into the specifics of the building. It would be similar to what the brewery is. The question I would ask you is, if you are looking for that kind of study, have you asked that of the distillery so that we can do the similar study as to what the distillery
I
does?
think one thing that we need to see clarity on the vocabulary here. I think plan as it relates to the physical aspects of the building, I don't think is where we really want to go as much as an action plan, if you will, an action of plan and of behaviors and give me some more words here.
I'm just thinking if there's material available, are you going to use it to help whatever you can?
And should we ask this, how does that get submitted and to who? It becomes a question for me.
Yeah.
and specifics of what items you're looking for. so
Yeah,
we
I
can
mean,
address that
we do
specifically.
kind of head down a slope here.
Right, right.
You know, John, one of the things, if you have amplified music, which we're talking about amplified music, it doesn't matter where the band is. It matters where your woofers and tweeters and amps are, you know, where your speakers are pointed. And you do get some reverberated sound. A lot of sound doesn't transmit through brick. So that's a good thing. But it's really a utilization. And if you, I don't know, it has nothing to do with the building itself. I mean, you've got brick and you got windows. If the windows are insulated, they're going to deaden more sound. If you turn the speakers so that they're not facing out toward the river, you know, you're going to have less sound than if you have them facing the river. It's common sense, but other than having the building with brick walls and doors you can pull down, and you know, they will probably on their own with that open ceiling he just described, put something in there to help kill some of the bouncing sound.
Yeah.
Because it just gets to be too much.
Right.
The
But
only
you
other
know.
thing I would add to that is looking back at the restrictions of the closed doors and that kind of thing. I believe that was put in place before there was a sound ordinance. And
Correct.
the wording was, as soon as the sound ordinance was put in place, those restrictions went away.
Superseded.
Thank
True.
you.
I'm good. I'm okay then.
Oh, go ahead, Ms.
What I don't understand here is why do you have to have garage doors? Why does there have to be 5 garage doors on the back side of this place? Why can there not just be glass doors that people can exit and go onto the patio? Why do you have to have these large doors open all the time? You have air conditioning in the building. You have heat in the building. Why, you know, you all can decide that that is not part of the plan, that you're going to just put maybe 3 glass doors from different areas in the building for people to go out on the patio. I don't understand. I mean, of course, it doesn't matter where the band's going to be. When you have 5 doors and windows open, wide open, the size of garage doors, that sound is going to come out. Okay, it's going to come out. That's what it does. It travels, and it's going to travel down the river, and it's going to travel up. And, you know, you may now, your point was Terrace Park has not said anything. I got news for you. Once you have bands going in the brewery and once you have bands going in this event center, it's going to be a lot more far reaching than it is now or has been. So just all I'm saying is you do have the ability to make this building more soundproof by not allowing these huge roll up doors where all the sound is going to come out. Thank you.
Dan Lynch, 208 Mill Street. We can have the band not project speakers and woofers out to the river. Okay, we can put the band facing the other way. Okay, so the sound is traveling towards the brick and glass and walls of the building. That's not a problem. I mean, that's naturally what's going to happen anyway. We don't really need to have that legislated. We're going to place the band that way. And as far as garage doors, breweries have garage doors. Breweries, event centers, Rheingeist, Mad Tree, they're all local breweries that have event centers. They have garage doors. Garage doors are part of the ambiance that make an event center feel like a brewery. That's the look. If you look at wedding venues across the country that have industrial building look and feel, that's what we're going for. I mean, in order to make this project work financially, we got to be able to rent this for quite a bit of money. It's going to be one of the most expensive venues in town, or it isn't going to fly. So, you know, it's designed to look great. I thought the drawings that KBA did were fantastic. The architectural, the amenity, the glass look, we couldn't be happier. But we're not going to put the band broadcasting out. We don't do that in the brewery now. We don't do that with music now. As Mr. Savage said, we close the doors that are, and you know, the sound ordinance goes till midnight on Friday, Saturday. At 11 o'clock, things are going to start turning down. That's the way weddings typically are. And, so there's going to be, I think we're worried about something that isn't going to happen. Okay. It's, as I said, we intend to be good neighbors. We're law-abiding citizens. We know that what the city council passed as far as the sound ordinance can change if we're not good neighbors. We understand that. Nothing's forever. So it's our intention to follow the rules and to do everything that we're supposed to do. And we think this building provides that. Thanks.
I hear what you're saying about asking them to come back, but I can't, I'm having trouble visualizing what they would bring and how we would evaluate it on what standards we would apply to say, yep, that's good, or nah, that's not good enough.
I've heard enough just from the
Yeah.
comments after. That's all I wanted. I really just wanted to hear more about what you plan on doing. I do believe this is a group of people who really do take the community seriously and have responded every time there has been an issue. So I don't believe that in any way that this is going to be an issue. I really don't, but I am also concerned for the problems we've had in the past with that noise and how it's affected some of the neighbors. So I do believe you've answered that question for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I believe they'll respond if there's an issue.
it was helpful for me to have a talk about it. It's helpful for me to see similar design elements that were included in the addition to the brewery. And it was extremely helpful for me to hear from a resident who said those changes in the brewery building made significant changes. So you could have your neighbor build a soundproof bunker, but if they decide to light silver salutes in the backyard at 2 a.m, you're going to hear them, right? So we can't regulate, that part of it. The things are there that they can utilize to contain their sound in a good way, and we have to take their word in good faith that they'll utilize those for the benefit of the neighbors. I would move that we entertain a motion. I'm not really good at motions, but I'd move that we do one.
Is anyone prepared to make one?
You ready, John? Lisa?
I'd like to make a motion. The Planning Commission approve the major building improvement and new construction site plan as noted with staff recommendations.
Second.
I'd like to ask that we add the
Vegetation.
adequate landscaping within the 30-foot buffer area required along the residential properties to be reviewed by staff.
And I will actually second that if that's something I'm supposed to do. Yeah, so that condition should be added, yes. As far as respect to the residential properties adjacent, yes.
Get that, Pam? So we have a motion and a second. Technically, we're supposed to vote on the addition to the.
Then let's do so.
Okay, so all in favor of adding a 15th condition regarding landscaping and buffer?
Aye.
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 So now we have a motion and a second to approve the site plan for Little Miami Event Center with 15 conditions. Pam, would you do a roll call vote,
Sure.
please?
Mr. Brumleaf?
Yes.
Mr. Pell?
Yes.
Ms. McKnight?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Wenstrup,
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing your product.
Thank you.
Have one additional case this evening. Does anybody need a break before we? Okay. Take a 5-minute recess at 8 o'clock.
You might need a water. There's waters back in the refrigerator.
We will call the meeting back to order at 8:07. Our next case this evening is Cobalt Station, 222 Worcester Pike, site plan review. And I would just like to state for the record, before I ask Pam to introduce the case, that as you all saw, the property is partially in the village of Terrace Park. And I've recently been contracting with the village of Terrace Park to be their zoning administrator. So if there are any review or approval of anything on the Terrace Park side, that'll be me. So if any of my planning commissioners has an issue with me participating, or if the applicant has an issue with me participating at this point, please say so. And I recuse myself. I did speak with Village of Terrace Park, made sure they knew what was going on. They had no concerns about a conflict for me to hear it at this point. So
I have no issues.
Right. And typically we would review just the portion that's on Milford anyway. That's what we're really looking at tonight. Are we ready to go forward? John Hobel, the applicant, is proposing to construct a one-story, 120 square foot addition and breezeway to an existing building located on Worcester Pike in Hamilton County. The site will be used as a restaurant. The building was formerly known as the Old Garden Shack, but has been vacant for several years. The project name is Cobalt Station, location 222 Worcester Pike, tax parcel 524-0002-0019 is in the city of Milford, and 521-001-0245 is in the village of Terrace Park. Total acreage is 0.819 acres. The zoning is B2 downtown mixed use. The existing use is vacant. The proposed use is restaurant. The property owner is 222 Worcester LLC. The adjacent land use zoning to the north is Milford River District in downtown Milford. To the south is the Little Miami River. To the east is, actually that's not quite right there, but we have that side of the river is all zone B2 downtown mixed use. So, and that's what the adjacent property is. The zoning use, the proposed use is a full service eating and drinking establishment. The building's use as a restaurant is permitted use in the B2 downtown mixed use district. According to the survey provided by the applicant, sheet A0.1, the subject site is split between two jurisdictions, the city of Milford and the village of Terrace Park. Both parcels are located in Hamilton County. The restroom addition and breezeway are being constructed on the Milford portion of the project. The project includes renovation to an existing single-story wood frame building with a partial walkout basement and 120 square foot bathroom addition and covered breezeway. The restaurant will hold approximately 64 occupants. The total building footprint will be 1,522 square feet. The building addition is not considered a substantial expansion, and therefore no additional landscaping requirements are triggered. The applicant is providing a total of 9 parking spaces. 3 spaces are located in the city of Milford. 6 are located in the village of Terrace Park. 4 of these spaces are in a parking easement area and permitted through an easement agreement. It is expected that residents from both communities may use golf carts to access the site. Staff would recommend that a small area be set aside for bicycle parking. The applicant has not indicated how trash will be handled or whether outdoor lighting will be installed. The city engineer reviewed the plans and notes that the area being redeveloped is generally a pre-existing condition and would not substantially alter the stormwater runoff quantity and drainage patterns. Water service is provided through the village of Indian Hill, and wastewater is handled through a septic system. Staff requested information regarding any Terrace Park approvals, but this information was not available. I also spoke with the mayor of Terrace Park, and he was very much in favor of the project. So very excited about it, and definitely in support of it moving forward. Staff recommendation, this small scale restaurant appears to be a good use for this property. Although parking could be a concern, the site is in a pedestrian friendly part of the city and the village. Customers may use alternative transportation methods to the site. The applicant appears to meet the technical requirements of the ordinance. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. City approval contingent on review and approval by the city engineer and other agencies. Add some bicycle parking. Identify how trash will be handled and provide a photometric lighting plan before outdoor lighting is installed. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I heard the bit about the photometric plan. I may have either overlooked or underheard anything about full cutoff fixtures.
Well, I would review that during the photometric lighting plan review. If they even are going to install lights, I don't know yet. That's something that we could clarify tonight, whether they're going to put lights up. But if they do, they will have to meet our chapter in the ordinance, which does specify full cutoff lighting.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. We hear from the applicant now. We ask that you step up to the podium unless, can they just talk at that mic?
Yes, yes.
So just make sure that mic is positioned for whoever's speaking.
Is it on? Yeah, it's on.
Yeah.
Sorry. Didn't want to touch it and tap on it, but
So just state your name and address for the record, please.
so my name is Ron Novak. I live at 7862 Daleview Road in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am an architect and owner of Drawing Department, the firm that's worked with Joe and John and Carrie to develop this. This is the actual applicant, who is John Habel. I'll let him talk about himself. So
My name is John Habel, also with Drawing Department, and I live at 1625 Pullen Avenue in Cincinnati.
So thanks for hearing us tonight. I can tell you the things that were important to us when we were approached by John and Joe and Carrie to resurrect this little charming building right on the border of town. And that was to create a space that was family friendly and wasn't the tail that wagged the dog, and was discreet and fit in with the surroundings and took advantage of the wonderful trees and the beautiful site and the sounds of the creek that were there. So it's a restaurant, it's a family restaurant, it's a burger joint. We're keeping the deck that's there. We want to leave a light footprint on what's there, but still provide accessibility and bathrooms for everybody and be good stewards to the neighborhood still. So that's what led to the design that we have today that's in front of you. You know, it's a modest light touch on this building. Again, sort of an adaptive reuse of the site and the building. So unfortunately, we couldn't put bathrooms in that building and still have any people inside of it. So we chose to kind of create a dog trot situation that would also allow us to control the patio or the deck portion of it that exists there that we're going to resurrect. So that seemed to be the most appropriate way of handling operations and also just the control of that outdoor space. So the bathrooms are able to be used by everyone. The building is now will be accessible, and it should be a vibrant, compatible business for the neighborhood. So that's what led us there. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer them however you need.
Terrace Park has always been a tough place to open a restaurant because they didn't have a way to get rid of, you had to build a grease trap or whatever.
Yes.
What's going on with that?
So we have a full designed, engineered, that one of the larger hurdles of the project was in fact that we have to present our menu and our food type and have an analysis done and a design done for EPA approval. With consideration of food service. So we have had the place surveyed, scoped, and we've hired SCS is our septic engineer. We have a brand new septic system that meets the capacity and the flow that the EPA, the state EPA would approve. So we had to prove that tying into the public system is fiscally and technically infeasible, and that would mean we'd be bringing our sewage across the bridge or under the river to get into downtown, which has 6 figures behind it. The system that we put in is a half of our budget for construction, based on the fact that we're having sandwiches and chips, right?
Yeah.
So we went through the whole process, and our system is designed based on our capacity of our occupancy and the food that we're bringing, and it's part of our application for the building permit as this. But those drawings aren't in this packet because this was about the zoning and the addition added to it. But the building permit application that we turn in has all of the engineered drawings with that for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and that sort of stuff.
I believe the place just down the road from you, what's it called, that restaurant?
The Birch, yeah.
The Birch.
So we did the
Had a
Birch.
similar problem.
We were the architect on the Birch also.
Yeah.
And so we did have a similar problem in the fact that restaurants generate wastewater that needs to get the grease out of it. And it's unique when you don't have a public system to take care of it. So our system has it has redundancy to it. It's a dual system to deal with the fact that we can't connect to a plumbing system that is publicly done. But we can meet the effluent requirements of the EPA with our design. Or we won't get a building permit for it.
Yeah.
That spot there, is that, sure it is, or you wouldn't put a bunch of money into it, but structurally sound from the standpoint of water running through that creek?
So we have had McGill Smith Punchin as our civil engineer, and Advantage Group Engineering is our structural engineer. So we have, the building is being amended in several places just because of the occupancy and the loading that we have in that building. And it's a unique historic structure, right? An old structure, an heirloom structure. But as far as the geotechnical capacity of that hillside, we're not making any footprint or changes to that slope. We're not making it unstable. We're not carving into it. So yeah, that's part of our design also.
And lastly, Milford enjoys a district they call the DORA, the designated outdoor refreshment area. Is it the operator's intention to be able to participate in the DORA?
We'd love to participate in that.
I beg your pardon?
We'd love to.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering about people walking across the bridge with an open container. I mean, the DORA needs to be somewhat contained for safety. And that's just kind of a real thing. I mean, we already got, I guess, sober people jumping off the bridge. Somebody can't be. Last group, they said people are jumping off the bridge. I'm going, what? But yeah, so that's a different discussion. That's
Yeah, right now it cuts off at the bridge.
it stops where?
The bridge.
Yeah, right at the bridge. So you'd really need, who would they need to talk to if they?
It'd be a council thing.
Okay, so that's not us. That's council.
Right.
Just so you
And that's
know. Okay.
not part of this right now.
Yeah.
Those are the questions I had. And one other, how many people, it looks like there's an outdoor seating area. Is there an indoor seating area?
Yes. So the total amount of people is 64 people.
64.
Correct.
And how many of those areas are outdoors?
31.
So if it's winter time, you've got space for 33?
That is correct.
Or 33 plus 31 real hardy souls?
Plus who's ever in the bathroom.
Our plumbing capacity, all that is based on our total occupancy.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got. Although I missed the flower lady.
So it's been a business. Thank you for the segue there for the flower lady. Access, traffic, parking, it's there, it's established. That's how it's operated in the past, but it's a little tricky.
Yeah.
Normally your hours of operation and what you're doing is not part of your site plan. But with regard to traffic, can you elaborate on your hours of operation and?
We'll be closed by 12 at night, so that's the latest we'll go to. It might even be 11:30. So it'll be lunchtime, so 10:30, 11.
True.
You have music?
We were actually going to build an amphitheater in the, no. No, the thing there is about how peaceful it is and its location on the creek. Part of the cool thing about it is a breeze comes down Redbird Creek and you can hear all the little waterfalls. And that's why we love it so much, just to be able to sit down there, quiet, listen to the birds and the nature. So
I'm not sure I actually got the hours of operation.
so it's going to be like a normal, so from 11 a.m. to about 12 p.m. at the latest. That's
Okay.
the latest one.
Monday, again, that's Joe Creighton, by the way.
Yeah.
John Santoro, 12 Dennison Terrace Park. Yeah, we'll fall within the parameters of basically all the local businesses. We're not going to be open super late. We're not going to be open super early. Sundays are going to be minimal. You know, we may go till 9. We don't know. I know football and the fall, that kind of stuff is popular, but as of right now, I think we close at 6, you know, so like a noon to 6 or 11 to 6. Monday through Thursday, I believe is 11 to maybe 10, maybe 11 at the latest. And then Friday and Saturday would be midnight, and then the concerts start after that. So I'm just kidding.
There are.
Beware.
That is a tricky place to get in and out of.
It is. And one of the things that we talked about, we took some private polls in Terrace Park and a lot of neighbors, we both live in the park. And, you know, I think we're going to get a ton of foot traffic, a lot of bicycles, a lot of golf carts. We've talked to,
How does foot traffic get to you from Terrace Park?
backside right behind you know where the church is, St.
Yeah.
Thomas?
Mhm.
And then through that, and I can't think of that road by the bike trail. There's one right in between.
Oh, I know where you're talking
New
about.
Street.
Yeah.
Is it
New
New
Street.
Street? Yeah, I can't even think of the name.
Like
New Street,
come down
Miami.
New Street and then walk along Worcester?
There's a sidewalk there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So there's 2 avenues, but I think the big part of it is we're going to be drawing from, you know, we'll have cars and we've talked about the issues. It used to be a diner grill back in the day, and I think it was Grady's. And we have a great picture of the 1950s cars pulled up in the front.
That's cool.
It was really cool. And we're just kind of replicating that. But I do believe, it's crazy, but I think we're going to have more golf carts than we are cars. So I never thought I'd say that. But again, a lot of the neighbors do walk to the Birch all the time. A lot of bicycles up there if you go past there, and a ton of golf carts. So
Just from my standpoint, I don't know that I feel safer knowing they're golf carts rather than cars, but you know, that's because that is the challenge here. But they can come down Miami and
Got right in.
yeah.
And that's the thing too, the speed limit there is 35 miles an hour. So coming around that bend, I think, you know, with more traffic, especially in the evening, people aren't speeding through there in the evening. So that's
Combined,
what,
nobody's
Milford
moving at
and
5
Terrace
o'clock.
Park.
yeah.
Make sure people follow that speed limit.
How do you, my eyeballs are tearing up here, trying to figure out where the dumpster is, or what are the waste disposal provisions?
So we don't show a dumpster on there. Sorry.
Okay, so.
We don't show a dumpster on there right
My
now.
eyes
You've
do
asked
not
for it.
deceive
So
me.
we
Okay.
need to figure out how much waste we're going to generate, because as a small diner, most of our stuff is disposable. We're not making warewashing stuff and that. So we need to review what type of situation the waste will be in. Is it a dumpster or is it rollouts?
Yep.
And then I think we want to figure out how we're going to screen that and where it's going to be located.
Not a major contingency for our part, but just I was kind of curious as to figure
And
out
that's
what does that feel like?
the feel that is, it's going to be the picket fence, the look of that building it is. We're just making it newer and so for the dumpster area will look like that too. It'll be behind a fence that you open up.
I'm trying to figure out what car you're going to eliminate to do that.
There's
I would imagine it's by the grease traps.
Yep.
Over there.
Yeah, see, but
So that
there's
is away from the patio.
there's an indention on the right hand
front?
side.
In the front of the building?
Yes, on the back. The right side, it sits back. There's a little cutout that'll be perfect for it. So it'll sit flush with the building. So fence.
You don't
will-
mean the grease traps, you mean where the septic tanks are?
Yes.
Ah, yeah.
Side of
Okay,
the
now that
building.
makes sense, yes.
Yep. So it won't be visible from the
Thanks.
Yeah, I believe they're not going to generate enough.
No. Yep. Yeah, they'll mostly likely be rollouts. And just to give a little history, I've owned and operated restaurants for the last 12 years, like the Rookwood in Mount Adams, Cheapside Cafe downtown, another bar down in OTR. So knowing the parameters of everything we need, like Ron said, it'll probably just be a few rollouts, and you can get picked up twice a week if you need to. So everything is very small at this location.
Perforce.
Yes. Will you do carry out as well as?
Yes.
Well,
What's going to be
when
the top? what's the
COVID, when
top thing on your
COVID-20
menu?
hits, you're going to be doing carry out.
Yes, we've thought about all that. It's been an interesting time for restaurants.
Yeah.
Any other questions from Planning Commission to the applicant?
What was that?
Multiple applicants. Do you have any more questions?
Sure I do. So I asked and she already answered, but what's your number one menu item?
I mean, I can't tell you that. It's a cheeseburger. It's going to be a little burger spot.
Okay, so the question is, do you need members of the community as part of a focus group to make?
Yes, I am. I was just going to ask you guys that. We 100% are.
We'll let you know afterwards.
The cool part about it is the design. I really feel the area is going to be really proud of what we're doing. We've taken the last year and a half to really study the area, what's going on. And as I always tell them, the places define the spaces. So we don't take something that, we have this concept and we shove it into something. It's you pick the building and then the concept comes from that. So it's a way to bring, all three areas, downtown, Camp Dennison, Indian Hill, Old Milford, Terrace Park together and have one spot that sort of plays on everything that's gone around here. So right now is a super exciting time to be here as well with everything that's going on. So
Excited for you.
yeah.
I've heard a lot of comments from neighborhood areas that we've needed a good burger joint, independent.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Well, the governor's got a damn good burger, just so you know.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do.
I
They
love
do.
the governor.
They
It's
do.
good.
They do.
And also, you notice that the residents have opinions about stuff and they have a problem letting us know. So, and you do have, you've got one neighbor on one side, but I think they just gave you an easement, didn't they?
Mhm.
Correct. Yeah. So, be cognizant of that so we don't have
sure.
to deal with it here.
For sure.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak regarding this application?
They had me at burger.
You're on.
It's a long walk if she talks. That's my wife.
Harry
Santoro.
All right. Any discussion by Planning Commission?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a charming little burger joint. I mean,
I assume lots of patio
Burger.
heaters out on that patio.
Yes.
To
Yeah,
get
but it's got
full
the
use of the
it's got the glass ceiling on it right now. So
Oh.
You'd be surprised how warm it actually stays with nothing on it. We were shocked this
Mm.
winter. So, it's going to be multi-seasonal, that kind of stuff.
Well,
It's
Acrylic cow wall-ish
it's
kind of stuff, yeah.
so.
I just as a comment, when the florist or the garden lady was there,
Laura.
it really was a beautiful corner.
Yep.
And hopefully you can carry some of that character into your place.
That's exactly the
Yeah,
look.
that's
And we've
not-
it seems like it.
just so you
was
know,
from what I
we've
saw.
talked to Laura, and when we get open, we want to have her come back in and still sell her flowers from the parking lot. So that's still
Cool.
that's part of the whole charm of that. So
Sure. Charm. It's a great word. I mean, that's really important for this particular area.
Yeah.
So
Very nice.
nice. Well done.
Okay, is anyone prepared to make a motion regarding the addition and?
Yeah, I'll motion to approve as is.
I will second to approve as is with the
With-
focus group.
With the four. I'm assuming you, with the four staff
With
recommend.
With the four staff recommendations, correct. I'm sorry.
Yes, I certainly know
Yes.
what you meant. All right. So we have a motion and a second to approve the site plan with the four conditions as recommended by staff. Call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Wenstrup,
Yes.
Miss Evans?
Yes.
Miss McKnight?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Pell?
Yes.
Mr. Brumley.
Yes, with a side of fries.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
You.
Yeah, we're so excited.
Welcome to
Congratulations,
Milford.
guys.
What's your timeline, like opening timeline?
Now,
Oh.
yeah, start real soon and
Good.
open real soon. So
Cobalt Station, what's
Right.
the impetus for the name? I'm sorry.
hold on. Is this thing working? So Abraham Colville came from Pittsburgh down the river to about where what marina is that? Four Seasons Marina. Came up with his family and about 20 people, some horses, and they built a fort where St. Thomas Church is, and that was the original fort. Those were the first settlers here, and they actually built a mill right there on Redbird Creek. They had gotten some scuffles with the Shawnee. He's actually buried there, minus a scalp. So there's a whole bunch of history in there, and that's sort of the play of the start of it. Even tying Adena Indians into the Shawnee, to the history of everything that happened in this area. And that's always usually my driving force for things. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah.
a
So
great story.
Very cool.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Were you able to find a photo or image of him?
there's his daughter actually kept a journal, which they have all the journal entries from the experience of being down there. So
We'll have a book in there about that.
Cool.
And the
Oh, neat.
readings you can take with you and bring back and that kind of stuff and have
That's
some,
neat.
even have some history lessons in there and some fun stuff
Yeah.
that really plays on
That's
the
awesome.
area that people really don't know about.
Right. It's great information.
Yep.
Wow. That's cool. Thanks,
Yep.
guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before
Neat.
Planning Commission this evening?
That's it.
All right, I will make a motion that we adjourn at 8:34.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Meeting
Quick second.
adjourned.